Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the hidden engine of pharma, product development services, or PDS. It's absolutely crucial to realize that pharma companies don't just invent a drug and boom, hand over a massive commercial manufacturing contract to a partner. It really doesn't work like that. They kind of have to date before they get married, right? And PDS is exactly where that relationship kicks off. It's the strategic front door to long-term manufacturing wealth.
So what does this all mean? Well, it turns out PDS is way more than just R&D and a bunch of scientists in white coats. Think of it as a vital scientific consulting and scale-up feeder system. This is how contract development and manufacturing organizations, or CDMOs, land those massive commercial contracts from giants like Sanofi, Dr. Reddy's, and even small biotech startups. These companies are paying a CDMO to design products, tweak existing formulations, handle the mountain of regulatory paperwork, and validate the processes. Sure, PDS brings in service revenue, but honestly, it's a strategic sales pipeline. It's the bridge that proves to a client, hey, we can handle your most precious asset.
And CDMOs really have to earn those massive manufacturing deals by successfully moving a drug through 3 exact development stages. First up, you've got the lab scale. This is where you prove the concept. Like, can we actually make this thing in small batches? If yes, you scale it up to a pilot batch to really stress test the manufacturing equipment with the recipe. Finally, if that pilot is a success and the regulatory bodies give you the green light, you make it to commercial scale. And that right there is where the massive long-term revenue lives. But, to get the gold, you have to execute flawlessly on steps 1 and 2.
All right, moving into the scientific engine room. Let's take a quick tour of the operational factory floor, specifically the 2 most critical departments.
So we've basically got 2 scientific pools working here. Formulation, which is essentially recipe design, and analytical, which focuses on quality science. Formulation is like the high-end pharmaceutical culinary team. They're the ones actually inventing the drug recipe. And analytical? They're the rigorous quality scientists asking the tough questions. Did you actually make what you think you made? And most importantly, is it safe? You absolutely cannot have a successful PDS division without both of these teams operating in perfect harmony.
Let me give you an example. Say a client wants a 2% ketoconazole antifungal cream. The formulation team has to determine every single one of these exact specifications before a prototype can even be made. They aren't just dumping powder into a vat and hoping for the best. No way. They're carefully balancing delicate oil and water phases. They're choosing the exact emulsifier so the cream doesn't separate while sitting on a pharmacy shelf. They're designing the preservative system to stop bacteria from growing, locking in precise pH levels, and even dictating the physical homogenization speed for the mixing machines. It's incredibly complex, highly customized science.
Now, because of all that complexity, formulation capacity actually dictates the start of any project. Literally, nothing moves forward until formulation begins. So if this team starts running at 110% utilization, well, that's actually a dangerously restrictive operational bottleneck. If your formulation scientists are overworked, everything gets backed up. Projects are delayed, regulatory timelines get pushed back, and the actual launch of the commercial product grinds to a halt.
I know what you're thinking. Hitting 100% or even 110% sounds great for business, right? On paper, pushing past full capacity seems like a fantastic way to absorb overhead and boost margins. But operationally, it's a ticking time bomb. You're basically forcing over-budgeted demand onto exhausted scientists. The fallout is severe. You get massive burnout, huge quality risks, inevitable project delays, and eventually soaring overtime costs that completely eat up those margin gains you thought you had in the first place.
Okay. So once a product is finally formulated, it heads over to the analytical lab. This is where our quality scientists take over. They use these incredibly expensive fixed-cost instruments like HPLCs to perform all the mandatory regulatory tests. They test for potency, checking if that 2% concentration is exactly 2%. They check for impurities and microbiology. They even stick the product in environmental chambers for 6 months just to see how it ages on the shelf. They'll even test if the drug chemically reacts with the plastic tube or glass bottle it's packaged in. It's the whole shebang.
Now, because analytical labs carry such a massive fixed cost structure with all those expensive instruments, management naturally wants high utilization here too. But listen, if this team hits 115% utilization, the system flat out breaks. It means rushed customer projects and missed FDA or Health Canada filing deadlines. And when the analytical lab becomes a bottleneck, the entire commercial launch of a drug is severely delayed. We're talking delays that can cost the pharmaceutical client millions of dollars in lost market exclusivity. It's a huge deal.
Project air traffic control. So, With all this scientific chaos and high utilization, how does anything actually get delivered on time?
Enter the PMO, or the Project Management Office. These are your critical coordinators. They track project slippage days and ensure that the formulation lab, the analytical lab, and specialized groups like skin labs are all perfectly aligned. They literally are the air traffic control. If formulation finishes a prototype on Tuesday, the PMO ensures the analytical lab is ready to test it on Wednesday. Because if you have a weak PMO, you get a domino effect of missed milestones, angry customers, and idle manufacturing slots out on the factory floor simply because the product wasn't ready to transfer.
Let's transition to the rules of revenue, because there's a fascinating financial twist to all this operational friction.
The way a CDMO operates on the lab floor fundamentally changes how the executive team forecasts the business. Historically, revenue was only recognized when a major milestone was hit. Say, when that 6-month stability test was finally done. As you can imagine, this created incredibly volatile, lumpy earnings. You might see 0 revenue for 3 months, and then bam, a massive spike in month 4. But the adoption of IFRS 15 accounting rules shifted everything to a percentage of completion model. Now, revenue is recognized progressively as the work is performed, as long as the customer is actually receiving the benefits of that ongoing development.
Under this new method, if you have a $1 million project, the revenue is recognized progressively as costs are incurred over time. So if we incur 20% of our expected labor costs in month 1, we recognize 20% of the revenue. By month 2, we hit 50%, and by month 3, we're at 100%. This is a real game changer because it dramatically smooths out the financial forecast. But it also means the finance team can't just rely on signed contracts anymore. They need incredibly accurate tracking of labor hours and project completion percentages.
Building the executive dashboard. Because we aren't just relying on hitting a single milestone date anymore, financial planning and analysis, or FP&A, needs highly specific metrics.
They can't just look at the bank account to predict the future, they have to check the operational pulse of the scientists. To accurately predict EBITDA and cash flow, you absolutely must obsessively track the backlog. Backlog is a vital KPI. It represents future guaranteed work, signed work sitting in the queue that hasn't been executed by the labs yet, and therefore hasn't been recognized as revenue. A growing backlog, that means future health. A shrinking backlog, that means a revenue cliff is approaching fast.
To manage all of this proactively, an FP&A team has to build out these essential dashboards. By tracking resource utilization right down to the individual scientist per month and overlaying that with project profitability and capacity forecasting, an analyst can see exactly what is happening in real time. They can pinpoint exactly which customers are eating up excessive, unprofitable lab time. They can even identify the exact week a specific team is going to hit that dangerous 110% utilization. This gives management the critical data they need to make immediate hiring decisions and stop burnout in its tracks.
Now for the strategic conversion funnel. Ultimately, the absolute most important dashboard metric, the holy grail for a CDMO, is tracking this funnel.
This means tracking projects from PDS development straight into long-term commercial manufacturing. Because remember, the labs are just the front door. The manufacturing plant out back, that is where the real money is made. Since a strong PDS forecast directly equals a strong enterprise forecast, we have to end on the most critical strategic question every CFO is asking about their pipeline. How many of your current development projects will fund tomorrow's commercial manufacturing? PDS is not just a science experiment. It is the engine of future enterprise wealth. If you can master managing the scientists, tracking progressive revenue, and smoothly pushing products out of the lab and onto the factory floor, you literally hold the keys to the entire business. So think about that the next time you evaluate a pipeline. How many of those development projects are actually ready to fund tomorrow's manufacturing?